After helping my boyfriend win a local election campaign, I caught him in a hotel room with his campaign manager, mocking my loyalty. When I asked why, he laughed and said, "You were just good optics." I took every dirty secret I knew, every shady donor, every illegal deal, and handed it to his opponent before the runoff election. He lost by a landslide. I met Sean Delaney in a community center gym in Charleston, South Carolina, where he was giving a speech to a half-full crowd about revitalizing the city's east side. His voice was smooth, his posture perfect, and every pause in his speech felt practiced, too perfect in hindsight. But at the time, I was floored. I was 35. Not some idealistic college kid looking for a cause. I had a full-time job running logistics and events for the Charleston Arts Fund. I'd worked with local government before, knew how to grease wheels, and understood how campaigns actually ran. I'd also had more than my share of disappointing men, ones who borrowed my time, my energy, my car, and once, my savings, then ghosted when things got hard. So when Sean smiled at me that day, I should have known better. He asked for my name. Thanked me for coming. Made small talk about the art scene in the city. By the end of that night, he'd asked me to coffee. We were seeing each other within 2 weeks. And within 2 months, I was volunteering for his campaign. Except volunteering doesn't even scratch the surface of what I was doing. I rewrote his speeches. I booked venues for his fundraisers. I coordinated canvassing routes. I pulled strings with my old contacts to get him on local radio. I even introduced him to 2 high-dollar donors who previously swore they'd never give a cent to a first-time candidate. I worked 40 hours a week at my job and another 30 for his dream. I didn't just believe in his message, I believed in him. I thought we were building something real. He played the part of the supportive boyfriend perfectly. He'd drop flowers at my office. Show up to campaign events with his arm around me. Tell donors how I was his heart and his compass. To the public, we looked like the picture-perfect power couple. And that was exactly the point. But behind the scenes, cracks had started to form. There were late-night meetings I wasn't invited to. Donors he didn't want me to meet. People I'd never seen before slipping into his campaign office and leaving with unmarked folders or envelopes. And then there was Brittany, the campaign manager. She was younger, probably mid-20s, fresh out of some Ivy League school, all ambition and tight blazers. She always seemed cold with me. I thought she saw me as competition, maybe resented how much influence I had in the campaign without a formal title. I tried not to overthink it. Until one night I showed up unannounced with food. It was a Thursday. Sean said they were working late, running numbers, prepping for the debate next week. I swung by Thai Island, grabbed his favorite pad CEW, and drove to the downtown Marriott where the team was staying for a planning retreat. I knocked. No answer. I had a keycard. He'd given me one for emergencies. I let myself in. I walked into the room and stopped cold. Sean was sitting on the bed, shirtless. Brittany was in his lap, wearing just a bra and skirt. Her lipstick was smeared. His belt was undone. The takeout bag slipped out of my hand and hit the carpet with a muffled thud. They didn't even jump. Brittany slid off his lap like I'd just caught them doing something mildly embarrassing. Sean stood up slowly, calmly, like a man expecting this moment. "Wow," I said. It was all I could manage. He didn't apologize. Didn't explain. He just looked at me and smirked. "You were good optics," he said. I blinked. "What?" He shrugged. "The loyal girlfriend. The local girl who believes in me. It plays well. Especially with older voters. But come on, you didn't actually think this was forever, did you?" I couldn't even speak. Then he looked at Brittany and said, "Told you she'd find out eventually." And they both laughed. I walked out of that hotel room and didn't stop until I got to my car. I sat behind the wheel in silence for 20 minutes before I cried. I felt humiliated. broken. But underneath the heartbreak, something darker started to rise. I could lick my wounds. Disappear from the campaign. Let him win. Or I could bring him down. And here's the thing, I knew where all the bodies were buried. Over the months, I had access to campaign records. Emails. Strategy meetings. Off-the-record conversations. And I'd always kept backups, out of habit, mostly. Dropbox folders, forwarded emails, screenshots. I knew about the donations from 3 local developers who were pushing rezoning deals through city council, deals Sean had promised to greenlight once elected. I knew about the unreported cash donations tucked into birthday cards. I had copies of donor agreements that were never filed with the city, even though they should have been. There was one developer, Murray Langford, who gave Sean $50,000 in exchange for a backdoor deal involving city-owned land. I had a recording of that meeting. Sean didn't know I was there, but I was in the hallway, phone in hand, audio rolling. That was the crown jewel. Attached were 27 files. Emails, donation records, meeting transcripts, the audio recording of the Langford bribe. I sent it at midnight on a Friday. By Monday morning, Rochelle held a press conference. The reporters came in droves. She laid out every piece of evidence I'd given her, carefully, legally, cleanly. She didn't even need to get personal. She just showed the facts. Transparency and accountability, she said. That's the promise I make to Charleston. Sean's campaign went into meltdown mode. 3 donors pulled out. His communications director resigned. Volunteers vanished overnight. The public turned fast, and the media smelled blood. And I wasn't done. After that press conference, Sean's world started to crumble, and fast. But the man didn't go quietly. He spun the whole thing as a coordinated smear campaign. Claimed Rochelle was desperate and relying on lies from bitter exes. He even name-dropped me on a podcast. Called me a disgruntled volunteer with a vendetta. I almost threw my phone across the room when I heard it. But it was the second time he mentioned me that things took a turn. He posted a video on his campaign's social media. Shirt pressed, smile rehearsed, saying, "It's sad when someone you cared about tries to destroy everything you've built. I always believed in giving people second chances, but some folks just want to watch the world burn." He didn't use my name, but everyone in town knew who he meant. I'd been at every event. Every rally. There were photos of us in the local papers. And just like that, the hate started. I got anonymous texts. "Hope you're proud, bitch. Traitor." One person emailed my work, accusing me of harassment and campaign sabotage. I was pulled into a meeting with my boss the next day. HR was there. They asked if I had anything to do with the leak. I didn't lie. I told them, if you knew what I knew, you'd have done worse. They put me on a 2-week suspension until things cool down. That should have broken me. And it almost did. But then Rochelle's campaign reached out again. They wanted to meet. In person. We met at a small diner off King Street. Just me, Rochelle, and her campaign attorney. She didn't ask who I was. She already knew. She thanked me. Said, "That info you gave us? That wasn't just damaging. It might have been criminal." I froze. "You mean, like jail?" "For him," she said. "If we dig a little deeper." Then she leaned in and lowered her voice. "Would you be willing to talk to a reporter? Off the record, at first?" That question sat with me for hours after I left the diner. I kept thinking about Sean, sitting in that hotel room, smirking like I was some fool. Like I was a tool he could throw away once I wasn't useful anymore. I remembered the times I paid for campaign supplies out of my own pocket because the budget was tight. The nights I stayed up fixing his speeches while he went out networking at bars. I said yes. The reporter was sharp. Mid-40s, calm, but with eyes that didn't miss a thing. We met twice. I handed over more files, answered every question. 2 weeks later, her article dropped in the Post and Courier, a campaign built on lies. Inside the collapse of Sean Delaney. She didn't name me, but I knew I was the source. And so did Sean. That night, he showed up outside my apartment. I heard a knock around 10:30 p.m. I looked through the peephole, and there he was, suit wrinkled, eyes wild. I didn't open the door. "You proud of yourself?" he shouted. "You think you won?" I stood silent. "You're nobody," he yelled. "Nobody's gonna remember you." He banged the door once. Hard. Then walked off. I filed a police report the next morning. Just in case. But things weren't over yet. Because it turned out I wasn't the only one Sean had used. More people started talking, another ex-girlfriend, a former staffer who'd been paid under the table, even a local journalist who admitted Sean had once offered her a favor in exchange for a positive story. Charleston was small enough that all of it spread like wildfire. Meanwhile, Rochelle's numbers shot up. But here's the twist I didn't see coming. One of Sean's former donors, Murray Langford, the guy who bribed him, filed a defamation suit against Rochelle's campaign. Claimed she'd doctored evidence and incited a false narrative. Which meant Rochelle's team had to prove the files were authentic. That meant proving they came from me. And just like that, I was dragged back into the spotlight. Subpoenaed. Rochelle's lawyers called me and explained what was coming. I'd have to testify, at least in a deposition. Maybe even in court. The fallout? It wasn't over. Not by a long shot. And Sean? He had one more move up his sleeve. I was already bracing for impact when the envelope arrived. It was thick, formal, and stamped by a law firm in downtown Charleston. Inside was a subpoena and a letter stating I was now a material witness in a civil suit involving allegations of political sabotage, falsified records, and campaign defamation. Sean was suing Rochelle's campaign, and by extension, dragging me in as the smoking gun. The deposition was scheduled 2 weeks out. Rochelle's team assured me I wouldn't be alone, that their lawyers would prep me. But that didn't change the fact that I'd now be under oath, face to face with attorneys hired by a man who wanted to destroy me. I barely slept those 2 weeks. The morning of the deposition, I sat in a glass-walled conference room on the 15th floor of a downtown office building. Rochelle's lawyer sat beside me. Across the table were 3 of Sean's attorneys. One looked like a bulldog in a suit. He didn't even look up when I walked in. They asked about every email I sent. Every document I handed over. Every conversation I remembered. And when they got to the recording, the one of Sean promising zoning favors, they leaned in. "Did you make this recording intentionally?" "No," I said. "I was recording the meeting notes for later." He didn't know I was still listening. They tried to trip me up. Tried to make me admit I had a personal grudge, that I had faked things, that I was emotionally unstable. I held steady. But after 3 hours, I walked out shaking. That night, I got another text from a number I didn't recognize. "Enjoy the spotlight, traitor. People are watching." I sent it straight to Rochelle's legal team. They traced it to a burner phone. What I didn't know was that the next phase was already being set in motion. See, Sean wasn't just trying to win in court. He was trying to win the election back, in the court of public opinion. He launched a full campaign rebrand. Changed his tone, his message, even his slogan. Before, he'd sold himself as a fighter. Now, he claimed he was a victim. He started showing up at community events with a cane, claiming stress-induced back issues. He posted photos of himself volunteering at soup kitchens. His campaign page ran video testimonials from people saying he made mistakes, but he cares. And then the bombshell dropped. A podcast episode featuring Sean, this time not with rage, but with tears. He said I was the love of his life who turned on him when he needed her most. "I still love her," he said, his voice cracking. But I think she got swept up in something bigger than both of us. I forgive her. I nearly threw up when I heard it. Suddenly, the narrative flipped. Some folks started saying maybe I went too far. That I ruined a good man's life over a breakup. That women like me always have an axe to grind. Even a few reporters I'd worked with started backing off. Rochelle's campaign went silent for a few days. Word was, their legal team told them to pause everything until after the court ruling. And in that silence, Sean's numbers crept up again. He wasn't winning, but he was clawing his way back. And I realized then, if I didn't do something, he might actually pull it off. But what could I do? Everything I had, every dirty detail, I'd already handed over. I was out of ammo. Until one night, I got an email from a strange address. No subject line. No signature. Just a sentence, if you think you're the only one he's burned, call me. Attached was a phone number. And a name I didn't recognize. I stared at the email for 20 minutes. If you think you're the only one he's burned, call me. The name at the bottom wasn't familiar, Alyssa Wren. I scrolled back through my brain, trying to place it. Nothing. No one from the campaign. Not a donor. Not one of Rochelle's people either. I called the number the next morning, using a burner app, just in case. A woman picked up on the second ring. Hello? Hi, is this Alyssa? A pause. Then, you're the girl from the article. The one who sent the files. I hesitated. How do you know that? Another pause. Then, because I did the same thing. 2 years ago. That made me sit up. She told me everything in one long, quiet breath. Sean wasn't new to dirty deals or fake charm. Before Charleston, he'd lived in Savannah, Georgia, where he worked under another city council member as an urban development advisor. Back then, he was dating her, Alyssa. A schoolteacher. And just like me, she got pulled into the campaign life. Planned fundraisers, helped him climb the ranks. Then it all went sideways. She caught him having an affair with the councilwoman's daughter, and embezzling funds from a PAC account. She reported it to the authorities. Nothing happened. Sean skipped town a month later and reappeared in Charleston like he'd been born there. And just like that, she said, he reinvented himself again. New city, new lies. She'd tried to go public once. A reporter had agreed to write the story. But before it could run, the reporter got cold feet. Word was, someone threatened a lawsuit. Sean claimed she was mentally unstable, obsessed. She got hate mail. Her school put her on leave. Eventually, she backed off. I didn't have the stomach for it, she said. But you, what you did. You might be the only one who can finish what I couldn't. My hands were shaking by the time I hung up. She sent me files, bank transfers, old emails, voice messages. She even had an old personnel file from Savannah's city office that included a formal complaint about unauthorized use of city funds. It had been buried, never acted on. But now? In the light of what we already had? It was a pattern. I handed everything to Rochelle's lawyers. They could barely believe it. This changes everything, one of them said. It shows motive. Intent. Not just carelessness, habitual corruption. The media caught wind. The Post and Courier ran a follow-up, more accusers come forward against Delaney, a pattern of corruption across state lines. Other outlets followed. Even a regional TV station aired an expose with Alyssa's voice, blurred, and documents spread across the screen. Sean didn't show up at his next campaign event. Rumors flew that he'd fired 3 more staffers. His official page deleted comments nonstop. And then, just 4 days before the runoff, he went completely silent. No posts. No interviews. No sightings. People said he'd left the city. But I didn't believe that. Because the night before the election? He showed up one more time. At my door. Not with rage. But with something else in his eyes. Defeat, or something worse. When I opened the door, Sean looked nothing like the man I'd once followed across Charleston's neighborhoods, helping him shake hands and win smiles. His suit was wrinkled. His jaw was scruffy. He looked smaller somehow, like the weight of what was coming had finally settled on his shoulders. "Can we talk?" he asked. I didn't answer. I just stepped back and let him in. He sat on my couch like a ghost. Didn't touch anything. Just stared at the floor. After a long silence, he said, "They're going to indict me. Maybe not right away. But it's coming." I didn't speak. I never thought it would be you. I crossed my arms. "You mean the woman you used and laughed at? The one you paraded around like a campaign banner?" He sighed. "It wasn't supposed to go like this." "Then maybe," I said, "you shouldn't have screwed half your staff and sold off zoning permits like baseball cards." He looked up at me then. Eyes red, but not from tears. From fury. "You don't get it," he said. "I was going to change things. I was trying to win. I just played the game the way it's played." "No," I snapped. "You played people. You played me." He stood, walked toward the door, then paused. "You think you won," he said quietly. "But all you did was burn yourself down with me. Everyone knows who you are now. You're the woman who takes people down when they're weak. You'll never get near another campaign again." And he walked out. But I didn't cry. Not this time. Because he was wrong. The next morning, the results came in. Rochelle won the runoff in a landslide, over 70%. Her acceptance speech thanked those brave enough to speak truth, no matter the cost. 2 weeks later, the Charleston District Attorney announced they were opening an investigation into Sean Delaney. Financial crimes. Bribery. Misuse of public resources. The works. And me? I wasn't forgotten, no. But not in the way Sean meant. A journalist I trusted published a full profile on what had happened, not just the politics, but the betrayal. The manipulation. The truth. Emails poured in. From women. From ex-staffers. From campaign workers all over the state. They didn't call me a traitor. They called me the fuse. And yeah, I lost some things in the fire. My job at the Arts Fund never came back. Some people still avoided me in the grocery store, unsure what to believe. But I never once regretted what I did. Because Sean Delaney wanted power more than anything. He thought people were just props in his story. And I was supposed to be just a pretty, loyal face. Instead, I became the woman who ended his career. I don't know where he is now. Last I heard, he was still in Charleston, living in a rented condo, waiting for indictments to drop. Most of his former allies won't take his calls. As for me, I'm doing okay. I consult now, quietly, on campaign ethics. I help people spot the warning signs before they get used the way I was. It's not glamorous, but it's honest. And every time I walk past that Marriott hotel where it all fell apart, I smile. Because that's where he laughed in my face. And that's where his story started to die.